This is a special broadcast program. Live from Tel Aviv, Israel. The Abraham Accord Peace Program and World Economic Development. The main event and stories from the Middle East and Gulf region. Technology. FinTech. Education. Science. And much more. And now with our special host, Samuel Shea.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Samuel Shea, live here on this special radio broadcast show from Tel Aviv. It's my pleasure to be here today. Today we're going to discuss about two major issues. The first one is about the Israeli United Arab Emirates trade agreement that was signed today, and also about the latest development regarding the new approach of Saudi Arabia government and His Highness the Crown Prince bin Salman towards the increasing the steps for normalization with Israel and the new steps that was taken on the last few days. We start with the Israeli United Arab Emirates trade agreement that was signed today in United Arab Emirates. We're going to discuss what is the meaning and the importance of such agreement, what is including inside him, and what are the future reflection that will be based on this agreement. I must say that really this is the first time that something took very quick. If we take in consideration what's happened with Egypt and Jordan, which over there took a few good years until we got into a trade agreement. Here with the Emirates, it took about 18 months, and today we saw the first result of this agreement. The idea of the trade agreement between Israel and the Emirates actually, it's talking about the free trade, free tax agreement between Israel and the Emirates. About 96% of the products and services are free of tax. I think there are a few of them, mostly probably with alcohol and tobacco, which I'm not sure. But all the rest, as far as raw material, food, textile, and all other merchandise are free of tax. What is the meaning of such agreement and the purpose of the signing the agreement between the two countries? Most are going to say, okay, we sign a trade agreement between Israel and Emirates. I mean, after all, the Emirates is 9 million people. Israel is 9 million people. So what is really the big deal? There is a big deal. There's a big issue on this from two reasons. We need to understand that United Arab Emirates, they are actually the gate for many countries in Asia, in the Far East, and also in the GCC. It's not only about issue between Israel and the Emirates. Today, Dubai is a major hub for trade and business activity with different and many countries. Also, Emirates is a gate for many Arab countries that currently don't have any peace agreement with Israel, but do accept merchandise from Israel and goods from Israel, which in this case it's a great opportunity also to penetrate and bring Israeli merchandise and goods to those countries. And also the other way, Israel also is a very good connection to Europe and the States and South America. We have many trade agreements with many countries, especially in the United States and also in South America. So the direction is both ways. And based on this, is going to be a major development in the future activities for many new businesses to redevelop in different industry. Especially mostly we're talking about food security, food plants, probably agriculture, textile, fashion, plastic industry, and so on, so on. The list is very long, which in this case can create a major pipeline from Israel to United Arab Emirates, and from the Emirates for the most of the entire world. So it's very important. This will help to rebuild and increase trade activity and industrial activity here in Israel. So in this issue, we're going to see that many companies and factories that was based on local activity, now they can go and approach the Emirates through the free trade agreement, and from there to approach many other countries. We need to understand the GCC is about 60 million people. We have Malaysia, Indonesia, which is almost 1 billion. We have Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and many other countries in the Orient. So eventually there is a big and large quantity of people that we definitely can approach and promote and bring Israeli merchandise. It definitely can help several sectors here in Israel, especially if we're talking about the Arab sector and the Bedouins and the other sector in Israel that we like to rebuild and redevelop their industry for exporting to the GCC countries and other countries worldwide. So eventually this is going to be a great opportunities for those sectors in order to come and promote Israeli merchandise and goods to those countries. Regarding the Emirates and other GCC countries, is the same situation. From the Emirates merchandise and a lot of products, there are import to the Emirates in very low cost, can be brought to Israel with no tax, which in this case it means that the price of the goods in Israel going to be reduced dramatically, which in this case will be helping us to reduce cost of life here in Israel. We need to understand that in the Emirates today we can find everything. Any type of brand name worldwide can be found in the Emirates, and definitely we can bring them from the Emirates to Israel, which is an important issue. On the future activities, when eventually businesses will come as far as professional industry, also it's going to be reflect on the taxation and all the activities between countries. At the moment, we know that the industry in the Emirates, it's not so developed, and they are working to increase and generate a different type of industry for the future. So eventually, with the next few years, the industry and business activity will be much higher in the Emirates. So eventually, in this case, it will be worthwhile for Israeli company to go over there to conduct businesses between Israel and the Emirates, and by this actually to bring the new trade activities between the countries. I hope that the first trade agreement with the United Arab Emirates was the first one. In the next agenda is probably Bahrain, which desperately need also this type of agreement in order to increase the business activity between Israel and Bahrain. Unfortunately, we don't have the same level like we have with the Emirates, and hopefully within the next few years is going to change, and we're going to bring much more business activities into Bahrain. and such agreement will be excellent in order to come and develop such activity. As I wrote today on Gulf News, this type of new trade agreement, it's great opportunities for the Emiratis to invest on a major industrial activity in the Emirates, especially by opening an industrial free zone and start to bring major industrial activity. As I said, it can be in the chemical industry, it can be in food security, can be in textile, construction, furniture, you name it. And it's definitely a great opportunity now for the Emiratis to pick up the gloves and see what they can do in order to develop an industrial activity in the Emirates. Beside today all the financial activities and cyber, but here we're talking about heavy industry, a lot of factories, a lot of activities, which is very important for the future economic development in the Emirates. This is actually the main core of the industrial development for GNP and GDP in the Emirates. So definitely such an agreement will be a great opportunity for the Emiratis now to start and cooperate on industrial zone in the Emirates, and by investing in Israel in startups in order to develop the technology that actually can come and build the factories and the activities in the Emirates. So it's kind of a bilateral activities between the Israelis and the Emiratis, which are definitely very important in order to bring such activity. If we remember about before the peace agreement, we was hoping for a business activity of $500 million, which was a great target. But I can tell you right now, the way it's look, we're going to cross over the 2 billion. And I think within 3 years, we can even reach between 5 to 7 billion dollar a year on such activity. So eventually, the direction is the right direction. We like to see more cooperation on the private sector in the Emirates, not only on private offices and royal families activities. We really like to see on the common business people, and really to start to see cooperation between the Israelis and the Emiratis in this. They are looking forward to such a cooperation between Israel and the Emiratis. It's very important for them that the private sector will be involved with the private sector over there, and not only higher level activities, but also, small size cooperation, even mama and papa operation that definitely can be cooperate between Israel and the Emirates, because as I said, because of the gates of the Emirates for all the GCC and other Asian countries, it's very important. And beside this, also other Arab countries. So it's definitely going to be a great opportunities for those Israeli businesses to come and engage in the Emirates and also here in Israel. I think, as I mentioned before, as far as the Arab sector here in Israel, this is their money time. Such an agreement can definitely increase and help to develop the industry on the Arab society here in Israel. This is a great opportunity. This is the first time that we're facing a major possibility of building a relationship between the Israeli Arabs and the GCC countries. This is a great opportunity also as far as business is doing. We have especially the triggering on such activity is the situation with China today, which it doesn't really pay to import goods from China because the cost of shipment is very high. In many cases, the cost of the shipment it's much higher than the cost of the good. And eventually now it's a great opportunity to develop a different industry in Israel and also in the Emirates that can be export to the other Arab countries, to Asia, to Europe. So definitely it will be a great opportunity. Today we can do ground shipment from Israel to Jordan, to Saudi Arabia, and to GCC countries, can be to Bahrain, can be to the Emirates, and hopefully in the future it's going to be also with Oman, Qatar, and Kuwait, which also with Saudi Arabia, which in this case is going to be amazing because the transportation, we're talking about day and a half, 2 day top. So eventually if we ship from Israel to the Emirates or Saudi Arabia, and from there to India or Afghanistan or Pakistan, so we're talking about 3.5 days max for merchandise and goods to arrive from Israel to the rest of the GCC and the Asian countries. Beside of the concept of the retail and the wholesale, I'm sure that inside this trade agreement, and eventually we're going to publish it very soon, there's a lot of parameters as far as R&D, research, also cooperation on a future joint venture between companies have definitely important issue in this agreement. So as we go slowly, we're going to learn and to understand the meaning of the trade agreement, what they are. We're eventually going to publish in our website on the social medias about the agreement and how it actually is built and what is all the meaning of all the small lines inside this agreement, so everybody can understand very clearly and see what can be done. So this was about the issue of the trade agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Hopefully, as I said, soon we're going to discuss also about eventually trade agreement with Bahrain. I'm going to continue feed you up with all the information about the trade agreement and what are the opportunities that are going to be. So eventually, even in the Israeli Business Forum on Facebook and LinkedIn, there will be information over there, but also we're going to bring here the information. Before we go to our next topics, as we all know, on Sunday it was Jerusalem Day, and eventually it was a very exciting event. And for this reason, we're going to take a break with an amazing sing of Rachaza, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of Gold, and we continue immediately after this with Saudi Arabia.
אוויר הרים צלול לקיים וריח אורנים נישא ברוח ארבעים עם כל פעמונים ובתרדמת אילן ואבן שבויה בחלומה העיר אשר בדד יושבת ובליבה חומה ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירה
Good evening, I'm Samuel Shea, and we are back here to our special broadcast show about the Israeli Emirates trade agreement and the Saudis' new development in the region. We just conclude our first part of the broadcast with the Israeli Emirates trade agreement, and now we're going to discuss about the latest development about the Saudis' announcement on the last few days and the major activities between Washington and Riyadh and also with Israel. As we discussed and we mentioned last time, on the last few weeks, we see a major activities from the Saudis toward the ability to start and normalize the relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, when the Biden administration came to power, all the Abraham Accord activities was kind of hold. We know there was a black cat between the Saudis and the American, and the new development or the attempt to bring the Saudis to the table and to sign an agreement didn't really succeed, and unfortunately we need to wait. But then the war in Ukraine started, and the interest of change in the region. I mean, the opposing of the embargo of the United States on Russia and forcing the European countries not to buy oil and gas from Russia actually changed the interest of the United States in the GCC area. And we saw it by the approach of President Biden to His Highness Ben Salman almost more than a month ago, by requesting to increase the production of gas and oil to Europe and the rest of the world. Eventually the Saudis didn't reply. They kept everything quiet. And then the interest came in. So eventually the Saudis says, okay, if the Americans want our help against Russia and toward the activity in Europe, so it's a give and take situation. And let's see how we can do a deal here. And I'm sure that one of the conditions for the Saudis to comply with the American requirements to increase gas and oil production was let's go back to the table and discuss about the Abraham Accord peace agreement, and eventually about our weapon deal agreement, the F-35, the Patriot missile, and so on and so on. So now when the Americans have a major interest in the region in order to help them to keep the embargo on Russia, because if there's not going to be any alternative for gas and oil from Russia to Europe, it's not going to hold for a long time, and eventually all the European countries going to start and reopen the trade agreement with Russia in order to maintain their industry. So President Biden eventually put a lot of pressure on the Saudis to come and really participate on this activity. And I'm sure His Highness Ben Salman saw the opportunity and he said, okay, you want something from us, we definitely want something for you, and let's see how we can do it and fast. By opening the production of gas and oil from the GCC countries, eventually also going to put pressure on Iran, because then the states will not be forced to come to an agreement with Iran and lift all the embargo from Iran in order to help them to produce enough oil and gas and to bring it back to Europe. So this situation creates a golden opportunity. And since the demand from the Americans toward the Saudis and the willingness of the American to let the Saudis to join the Abraham Accord, the peace agreement, His Highness Ben Salman start to release announcement. First it was by announce that Israeli companies and Israeli businessmen and Saudi's businessmen start to do business and coming and going. Then there was announcement that there is Israeli passport accept in Saudi Arabia, and then they can come over there. A few days ago, they announced freely that Israeli passport can enter Saudi Arabia, and we see a lot of delegation from Israel and from the United States are back and forth between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which eventually is going to bring us very soon for a major common announcement, probably first by President Biden and then by His Highness Ben Salman and Prime Minister Bennett about the normalization and the agreement of peace agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And we need to understand when this such of activity will take place. It's a major game changer, and we're going to see probably Oman, Qatar, and Kuwait also joining Israel into the peace agreement. And eventually, in the future, we really hope to see many other Arab countries or Muslim countries, such as Malaysia, Indonesia, maybe even Afghanistan and Pakistan, Iraq, in order to come and join the peace agreement. By changing the rules of the current situation in the region with the Abraham Accord, eventually a lot of things will change. Definitely the Saudis' interest to invest on Israeli technology going to be very high. I think we're going to see major investment of Saudis in Israel and Israeli technologies and Israeli startups in order to bring such technology to Saudi Arabia and to develop new projects, not only as a companies or individual technology, but as a major project in Saudi Arabia, in order for them to really fulfill and approach the vision of His Highness Ben Salman of 2030 to comply with all the vision to disengage from the oil and gas industry in the future. Beside this, we really like to see the Palestinian and the Jordanian and hopefully also the Syrian coming into this procedure, which definitely will oppose peace and quiet in the area. As far as the Jordanian, we need to understand that the Saudis are a major patronage in Jordan with major projects and activities. So eventually it's going to help a lot. Hopefully we can also bring in the Palestinian in order to build and merge them together in economic activities in order also to lead them toward the path of peace agreement, because of the current economic situation today over there, which is more than catastrophe. It's one of the major reasons for all the violence and chaos in the area, because simply people have nothing to do when they wake up in the morning. They have no jobs, they have no purpose in life, they cannot raise family, they cannot make up and build family. So it's created a lot of problem in this issue, and definitely a major economic development will help and bring a new prosperity to the region. As far as the Saudis in the general view, I think it will be very wise from the State of Israel to give a great gift to His Highness Ben Salman, is the opportunity to take and control the Al-Aqsa Mosque and replace the Waqfs over there, and let the Saudis to manage and develop the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Eventually, if the peace agreement will be with all the areas, we're going to see a major pilgrim from the Muslim countries to Jerusalem, to Al-Aqsa, and definitely it requires a major organization to handle such activities. The Waqf is not capable of handling such activity. Beside promoting chaos and terror, we don't see much of the Waqf doing. They also bounding the status quo between Israel and Jordanian and the Waqfs about the activity in the Al-Aqsa area. And it's definitely going to be a great honor for the Saudis to manage the area and the mountain over there. So this is going to be definitely an important steps toward a trust building between Israel and the Saudis, and give them the ability to control and manage the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I don't think the Jordanian will oppose it, because after all, Saudi Arabia is a major contributor to Jordan, and they definitely need to let them, as the leading Muslim country at the moment in the Arab world and in the GCC. So definitely it will be a great gesture from the Jordanian and from the Israeli to the Saudis to control the area. As far as general activities between Israel and the Saudis, which I think will happen very soon, beside the announcement, I think it's a question of days. Maybe even by this Thursday or probably next week, there will be the announcement, hopefully. And this eventually all the game will change. All the economic game in the area will change. It will create a major opportunities. The Saudis looking forward to really to invest major resources toward new development in Saudi Arabia and also in the MENA area, especially in Africa. And by promoting and cooperation between Israel and the Saudis and other GCC countries, eventually we're going to be able to promote and build many industries and many projects between the countries. And it's definitely going to help toward the economy in Israel, in Jordan for sure, in the Palestinian Authority for sure, in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, everybody going to benefit in this area. As I said, we hope really also that Syria and Lebanon will join in, because eventually the situation over there is much above catastrophe, especially in Syria, which this country is completely destroyed and need to be rebuilt completely. And I'm sure the Saudis will be able and willing to invest in Syria, to invest in Jordan, and really to develop the region. Hopefully in the future also with Iraq, the thing will change. And who knows, maybe also with Iran in the future, those type of activity will change. So this is the current situation with the Saudis. We hope to see those new developments in the future, and eventually things going to change, and we're going to see a major development. I'd like to thank all my audience and my listener for this great show. We're going to keep you here and update you every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Israel time, and hope to see you soon again. Thank you very much, and God bless you all, and have a good night.
הרדיו החברתי הראשון. הכוח חוזר לאנשים.